You're in the right place at the right time, stretching from the distant spaceports of Black Spire and Mos Eisley and Port Haven, all the way to the bright center of the galaxy at Imperial Center, slamming into your hollow projector like a supercharged nanoparticle of coaxium. This is the Star Wars Unfiltered podcast. I'm John, and my co-host is Jason, and we are here to bring you your needed dose of Star Wars film, TV, book, comic, gaming, and collecting news. The date is April 5th, 2021. And today's news includes we got the Bad Batch second trailer came out. We'll talk about that and have a little bit of a breakdown and some theorizing. We got the Star Wars Essential Legends collection announced by Del Rey. We also have the Star Wars Vintage collection now streaming on Disney Plus. We'll briefly talk about everything on that again, and one thing I didn't mention on the previous news item about that, so that should be cool. And then we have a special YouTube channel announcement, and we'll also be talking about Alan Dean Foster and Disney royalty issues that he's been having. And we also have a more on the Gina Carano situation, and specifically a Forbes article and some interesting insights with that. So how was your weekend, Jason?
It was good.
It was just good.
It was just good. Started reading the Lost Stars, which was a big change of pace from the Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina.
Yeah, definitely.
And finished up editing all that playthrough stuff we had for.
Yes. There's always
the
constant
channel.
behind the scenes things with us on the channel. We're always getting more gaming material, editing, social media on my part. There's always something. And I think we're getting a better balance of everything. We're starting to, streamline stuff. We're starting to get it out faster and on a more regular basis. So yeah,
that was your
really
weekend.
Fun. My weekend was good. I absorbed a lot of Clone Wars again. I've been revisiting that because I felt it was high time before Bad Batch. I was like, well, it has been about 5 years since I watched Clone Wars when I first binged it. And it's funny when I looked at how many episodes there's about 130. I thought, oh, that's an insurmountable mountain, even in 1 month to see. But once you remember that each one is 23 minutes and you can crank through like 4 a day easily, and sometimes even more, I'm already almost done with season 1, and it's only been a few days. So I'm actually, and then when I even looked at my notes from 5 years ago, it was pretty spread out when I watched it the first time. So I was thinking it was longer than it was because I had spread it out so much. But
Well, that's kind of the case with all things like that.
Yeah.
Once you get things going, then it like, it starts moving quickly and a lot faster than you think it does. There's been times where I've tried to chew through series and stuff, and it gets a lot easier.
Yes.
Once you get the ball rolling, and it doesn't seem so insurmountable, like you said.
Yeah.
Although I've said before, I watched the entire X-Files thing. I'll never do that again. I'll never watch that entire series again.
Those are just long. They're long episodes. Each one is 45 minutes without commercials. So
yeah. And Clone Wars is like a lot less than that.
Clone Wars is 23 minutes on average, and also there's something really breezy about the Clone Wars episodes. Like, I don't know, there's something about them. They're quick, short adventures, but what's cool is a lot of them are done in 3-episode arcs. So it feels like you get this big complete story if you see the 3 in an arc, which it would be like just over an hour, So I don't know. I'm really enjoying it though. And in my memory, I had thought that season 1 was kind of iffy, and it still is a little bit rough on the animation compared to later seasons, but I'm surprising myself by noticing how much of season 1 is really good.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those strange things when you go back and revisit, you kind of, see things from a new angle. But we got Bad Batch coming up. Like I said, I wanted to finish my Clone Wars again in preparation for the Bad Batch, and the second trailer is pretty cool, and it gives more of the story as opposed to the first one, which is kind of a basic teaser. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here. There's this like little girl named Omega, apparently, according to the subtitles. People have figured this out.
I didn't pick up that she was a girl from the trailer.
It's so quick, and also she has short hair, so it's like if you just saw her just for a second, you might not catch that it's a girl, but because
Well,
I don't
and
even,
I mean,
yeah,
if it's a Django clone, you wouldn't necessarily jump to that, you know,
yes,
that
yes,
conclusion. And little kids, a lot of times, they just have high voices anyway, even if they're
right,
boys.
exactly, especially for voice acting for Clone Wars and stuff like that. But what's interesting is her name. So Omega is, I think, Greek for last, just like Alpha is like first. So that would imply she's like the last clone, I think, or the last of the original clones, maybe.
Yeah, I think they're telegraphing that.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like okay, so like the Bad Batch seems to go rogue according to the trailer. I guess that's out of the bag now. Um, and which I kind of like. I thought I wasn't sure how they're going to do that because, you know, do they want us to root for the Empire or the Rebels? Because this is the beginnings of the Dark Times, you know. So it's the transition away from the Republic. And what I like is there's so much story potential there for especially for fans of the Empire like me and you. It's like the beginnings of all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm really excited for this series. I think I was just kind of lukewarm when it was first announced. I mean, I love the Bad Batch characters when I saw them in season 7 of Clone Wars, but I just thought, oh, okay, you know, this is a natural progression. But I don't know, as time has gone on and I've seen the trailers, I'm really excited. And yeah, there's a couple other things I'll mention, but what is your thoughts on this trailer?
It looked good. Obviously, I still need to, sit down and watch all the Clone Wars stuff. So there's things
Mhm.
that maybe, um, well, so if it's set after the Clone Wars, I'm kind of excited to see that transition to stormtroopers.
Yes.
Like because
Yes.
I'm guessing that hasn't been covered even in
No, not really. Not really.
the final season of Clone Wars. Where did that take place exactly?
It was like the last 2 or 3 episodes actually were concurrent with Revenge of the Sith. So you see,
Okay.
it was basically Ahsoka's point of view during the events of Revenge of the Sith, and you even see a couple movie scenes that exactly parallel it. Like I mean, like we've talked about this off the podcast, but like there's a super cuts that fans have put together
Right.
where
Right.
they combine those episodes with the movie, and it turns into this like 4-hour epic, which is kind of cool. And I still need to actually sit down and watch, but
Sounds like a Frankenstein monster to me.
it kind of is because you're mixing CG with live action, but it's really cool actually though when I've skimmed it because for example, there's a scene where Ahsoka is talking to Mace and Yoda through hologram and they're talking about Darth Maul who she's dealing with on Mandalore, and then it cuts away and then Mace and Yoda have their conversation in the Jedi Council like war room with Kiadi that we
Hmm.
see in Revenge of the Sith when I think it's when May says uh something to Yoda, something about like the Senate, you know, or Kiadi says like we need the approval of the Senate
Hmm.
to arrest the Chancellor. So you see one thing and then it goes into that and you're like, oh wow, so Ahsoka was just talking to them like right then. It just adds that kind of like feeling of connectedness, you know, to
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Um, so that's cool. And then, so yeah, basically, when season 7 ends, there's a bookend. I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's really cool if you see, but there's a bookend where you see Vader in the armor. And so that would imply that it's just days after Revenge of the Sith. So I'm assuming Bad
Right.
Batch is going
Right.
to pick up right after that. So it'll be like day 5 after Revenge of the Sith, probably. And then in the first Bad Batch trailer, we saw Palpatine's speech about the formation of the empire, which
Yeah.
was
Yeah. That was cool.
lifted. Right. So, and then Saw Gerrera is in the second trailer. And I was paying close attention because, you know, we have 2 versions of Saw Gerrera. There's the Clone Wars version from season, I think, 5 or 6, where he was younger and thinner and he was part of this resistance on Onderon, his homeworld.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the Rogue One version where he's like decrepit and like cybernetic, half of his body, and he's like his health is failing. So there's a gap there of like, you know, about 20 plus years. And I was wondering how they were gonna if they were gonna depict him in this, how they would do it, because already when you see him in Jedi Fallen Order, that's just 5 years after Bad Batch, and he already looks like pretty much like Rogue One saw.
Hmm.
So they have to kind of adhere a little bit to that. And it seems like with the voice actor, it sounded like it was closer to Forrest Whitaker's voice. I don't think it's him, but it has that cadence.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're definitely transitioning him, and there's so much with him they can do because his whole resistance movement and how
Well, I like the
cutthroat they are.
idea. Yeah, I like the idea of there being a like another group, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of not just totally in line with the Care Bear Rebel Alliance, you
right,
know.
right.
So he's a super interesting character, and just it's kind of like Vader, where or any character that has like these, I guess, augmentations or things that are keeping them going, like medical things.
Hmm.
It's interesting to wonder about, like, oh, why does he need to, why does he need help breathing or whatever, what
Or
happened?
if I always figured that was his medical marijuana that he has in his air unit,
Spice.
and yeah, it's a spice because the look he gives Bodhi after he breathes in and he has that kind of stony look where he doesn't say anything. It looks like someone right after they took a giant bong hit.
Yeah.
So it's just classic.
Maybe he's quasi based on like Fremen from
Right,
Dune,
right. I know, very true, because spice is like basically a drug, and it's the drug of choice in Star Wars, it seems, some version of it. So
or Nick Teen or Nick I Teen or
yeah, right,
whatever.
yeah, Nikki Tane or whatever, yeah,
Yeah,
whatever that was
whatever
the
Danik Jericho was addicted to.
yes, imbibing in the Mos Eisley Cantina. Um, but
Oh,
yeah, I don't.
anyway, I'm
Yeah,
excited to see to go back to what I said. I'm
yeah,
excited to see maybe some more like information and background into the transition from clones to stormtroopers. Obviously, maybe the Bad Batch is like kind of a catalyst for ditching the clones, because that's
yes,
never, as far as I know, that's never really been covered or talked about. Like what happened to that, that clone factory going on.
yeah.
That
There's
whole
there's been hints, but there's not been anything firm about
right.
the Empire in regard
And
to that.
like Dr. Pershing in Mandalorian, right? I think that's his name, Dr.
Yeah,
Pershing.
yeah,
He's got the Camino logo
yes,
on his arm there. So
yeah.
there's little hints at stuff going on, and even if they don't like spell it out,
Hmm.
if there's more hints or more information on the transition and what happened to Camino and all that stuff, I'm excited for.
Yeah, me too.
I
Me
think I'm
too.
more excited about that than anything else. I
Yeah,
do think
I agree.
it's a little funny when they inject Tarkin into things, because
Yeah,
he's kind of popping up everywhere, especially like right
yeah,
now for me, because I just started reading Lost Stars,
right. And
and
he's in the
he's like
prologue.
immediately it's boom, it's Tarkin and Piet, and I'm like, oh come on. And then even before that, with Veers showing up in Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, and of
Yeah,
course that's old EU legends, but
right.
it's just funny when these characters, they have to pop up again, right? They can't create some new thing. But then we lament over the lack of Zarin and Moff Rebus and stuff showing up. So I don't know. I feel like, but see, I guess that's kind of the point, right? Instead of Tarkin, they could have recanonized some other Moff from the old EU, and just as a bone, throw us a bone.
So yeah, speaking of Zarin, he's one of those characters that it's like he's kind of not even second tier. He's like third tier on like popularity because not a lot of people knew about TIE Fighter and
Hmm.
him specifically. But I feel like if he was recanonized, that would be one of those things that would highlight where where he came from originally. Kind of like when they recanonized the TIE Defender and Rebels. I think obviously a lot of more casual even EU fans were like, "What the hell is this?" And then it kind of highlighted TIE Fighter again for people. And
Yeah.
then, obviously there's goodoldgames.com. So it's one of those things that if they use Zarin, I feel like in the right way, it would satisfy everybody and be really cool. So
Well,
yeah,
I think that ship has sailed with Krennic,
yeah,
because
yeah.
Krennic fills that spot. So
Yeah, to a certain degree, he does. I mean, yeah, because it's a very similar role. It was basically like the scientific kind of admiral or Moff who like
yeah, head of
oversees
research and
head of
stuff, and
research. Yeah. But I think Zarin could work in a post A New Hope setting. Like he replaces Krennic, maybe,
yeah, that'd be
since
cool.
Krennic is taken out, obviously. So I think it could work in that regard. But then of course we'd be cramming more content between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, which nobody needs. It's like even in canon, it's like just stop.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
decades to focus on, and backfill. We don't need that 4-year gap like stuffed with more things.
That
But
is a problem I have with most things, even outside of Star Wars. This fascination with filling in certain areas of a story and prequelitis, just
yes,
obsessing with going backwards, continually going backwards in all
right,
these stories. Star
right.
Wars, especially.
Yeah. Um, but anyway, as far as a Bad Batch, that's all my thoughts pretty much right now. I'm sure there will be more as the show starts, and I'll start giving my thoughts on it.
All right. Next news item is Del Rey is re-releasing an Essential Legends collection.
I'm
Um,
excited by this,
Yeah,
actually.
so they've selected a handful of books to re-release in trade paperback form with new cover art and also a unabridged audiobook version of Shatterpoint, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I wonder what like it started that idea rolling. Why
Um,
Shatterpoint? And was there
well,
a clamoring of Shatterpoint fanboys out there?
no,
Like,
no, but I was thinking about it. I think what it is there's a lot of there's a lot of there's a lot of fan love for Mace.
yes.
And there's a lot of like theories and stuff or hopes that he would somehow be revealed to still be alive, you
Oh,
know?
right, right.
So it could just be riffing on that as far
Hmm.
as, kind of throwing the fans a bone with more Mace material, even if it's not like new Mace material, but like maybe putting it forth in front of people's faces is, if you want more Mace, there's actually a book that
Right,
centers on him, and
right.
we'll even record an unabridged version of the audiobook. So,
Yeah, this whole idea is really cool, and it's kind of funny that they're already releasing new Legends cover art because some Legends books got new cover art a few years back. The
yeah.
Thrawn trilogy, for example, um, which if you combine all three makes like one image, but they're doing it again for the Thrawn books, which is cool because they are kind of the core expanded universe starting point for everything.
Yeah.
And then of course there's Path of Destruction, the Darth Bane novel, which I never
Hmm.
got around to reading
Same.
originally. Um, Now the interesting thing about Shatterpoint also is in the Kanan the Last Padawan comics that came out about 6 years ago that tied into Rebels. Kanan was the Padawan of Depa Billaba, the Jedi Council member who was Mace's Padawan.
Yeah.
And from, even though I never read Shatterpoint, I understand in that story, Depa disappears on Mace's homeworld in the jungles, and she goes crazy or something like that.
Hmm.
And what's funny is the Kanan comics actually referenced her time away and her rehabilitation. So they almost like recanonized that for her.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't think it's that much of a stretch if to Lucasfilm licensing, if they wanted to take the broad strokes from Shatterpoint and just say, hey, these happened in canon also.
Yeah, that's kind of where it gets messy, right? Like that's where
It
they
can.
they could have had like a chopping point as far as like, well, we'll keep all the, prequel era stuff because we don't really
Hmm.
want to fill that stuff in too much, and we'll jettison post Return of the Jedi or post
Yeah.
Battle of Yavin stuff, and but then it
Yeah.
gets that's where like a lot of confusion comes in. So
Hmm.
um, I guess this is probably as good as it gets as far as like recanonizing a whole novel,
Yeah.
is to reference it even in passing.
Right.
I read Shatterpoint. I don't really have a strong recollection of what exactly happens, which is kind of true of most of
Well,
the
it
prequel
was
books for
about
me.
let's see, for us, that was about 16 years ago, I think, when it came out, because it was during the 2003, 2004 original Clone Wars media
Hmm.
explosion. So no, that was a while ago. There's Star Wars novels. Strangely enough, there's novels I read 5 to 10 years ago that I remember far less than ones I read 20 or 25 years ago.
Hmm.
Probably just because as you get older, sometimes things resonate less, you know.
Yeah.
But no, I am excited by this Legends reprint thing, and
How do you feel about the cover changes?
I think they look great, and I like that they're more uniform. So like when you see them together, it makes it look like a really nice library, with the
Huh?
typeset and everything. I'm not sure about Luke holding up the lightsaber on Heir to the Empire. It's very A New Hope / Return of the Jedi. I don't know.
That's the one I didn't like. I like
Yeah,
the other
it's
two. I
just
like Path of
yeah,
Destruction. I really
yeah,
like the new Shatterpoint because the original Shatterpoint cover was pretty
yeah.
pretty bad as far as I'm
Although
concerned. But
I'll say anything is better than the original Heir to the Empire cover, which had
What, you didn't like
elements.
that?
I thought elements of it were good, but overall, some of the
You
characters
didn't
looked
like
kind of
Jorah
off.
Sabath's six pack?
No, actually, actually, he looked okay. Actually, you know what? As far as the Thrawn trilogy, that one's not so bad. But the covers for Dark Force Rising and The Last Command looked really iffy on the mostly the character faces. I
Yeah,
remember Harrison Ford didn't look so great on the third
yeah.
book. It was
Well,
just
it's
kind of
interesting because to me, it comes off as them kind of teasing, not teasing, but like um, trying to get people to buy and read the other two Thrawn books.
yes,
Where
yes,
because it's like, oh, that's kind of weird. You're like doing just one of the trilogy. So I wonder if they're going to re-release the other two. They
right,
said there'll be more books released later this
yeah, in
year.
fall.
Presumably, maybe everything eventually will hit trade paperback versus the
Wait, you
old.
mean I'm gonna get the Bounty Hunter Wars with new covers?
I'm I'm sure Del Rey is gonna invest the money
Yeah.
into maybe they'll get Drew Struzan.
Oh, dude, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, it'd be something, all right.
It would be something considering he's retired. Yeah, who
Oh, is
knows?
he?
Maybe
I didn't even realize.
he actually is. If you
Oh,
he's because people keep commenting on his Facebook, are you gonna do this again? Are you gonna do that? I'm retired. I'm retired. But
he deserves it.
yeah. But yeah, maybe the glove of Darth Vader too. I'm just gonna see. I'm gonna see how many horrible Phantom era Star Wars novels I can mention before the joke runs dry. But yeah, yeah, the Crystal Star coming your way,
Crystal Star.
reprinted.
Wait, is
The
that Crystal Star? Isn't
essential.
even is that even the first book in that trilogy, or is Children of the Jedi the first book in
No, no,
the
Crystal
trilogy?
Star. Crystal Star was a standalone. You're
No, no,
thinking
no.
of
But
yeah.
wasn't Crystal Star? Wait, what was the Callista trilogy?
The Callisto trilogy was Children of the Jedi, Dark Saber
Oh,
by
Dark
Kevin J.
Saber.
Anderson,
Dark Saber.
and
That's right.
then Planet of Twilight.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And then Crystal Star is right after Planet of Twilight. So it's a whole string of poop right after.
That's like it just
It's a
bleeds
daisy
together.
chain. It's a daisy chain of EU garbage. Like right,
Yeah, that was
pretty
a.
much. Actually, you could say it starts with the Jedi Academy trilogy,
Hey,
or
come
or
on.
or even Dark Empire. It's like right after the Thrawn trilogy. It's just like kind of like poop, 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 and then I think it gets good again with the Black Fleet Crisis, because then that's a
Yeah,
couple
good
years
enough for
after.
you to reread the first book like four
I,
times or
I
whatever.
contend, I contend that that is the most underrated Star Wars book trilogy in existence that I've personally read. So
Uh, I would agree. Yeah, I like it. That one, I really like that series, that trilogy, and nobody ever talks about it.
nope, they don't.
Anyway, yeah. So I
Anyway,
mean, Crystal Star, just that yeah, like you said, that string of poop. It just occupies the same space in my brain, so it all just
yeah,
merges together. The only thing I can pick
yeah,
out is certain plot details from like Dark Saber, and
yeah.
that's like it. But
But
anyway,
if this is really called the Essential Legends collection, though, I would expect that we are going to see Dark Force Rising and The Last Command. I expect that. I'm trying to think of like what most fans consider to be the best. I wouldn't be surprised if they throw in one or two X-Wing books or all of them eventually,
yeah.
because those are highly regarded. And you know what? I bet you they would do that right before the Rogue Squadron movie to kind of like, get people
Yeah, I mean,
pumped up.
part of this, the Heir to the Empire re-release, might be building up to live action Thrawn
Yes,
or something, and that might be the other two books coming later might actually
exactly.
lead into not that the story leads into, but just like it's Thrawn material for this character hitting live action or
Right.
animated or whatever he's gonna come as.
Right. So yeah, well, let's keep our eyes on in the autumn, and we'll see what books come next. And then we also have the Star Wars Vintage Collection now streaming on Disney Plus, and we briefly talked about this a few weeks ago when it was first announced. Um, and I finally now watched some of it. I watched or rewatched the story of the Faithful Wookiee from the holiday special, and it's really nice to see that in HD because the animation really is gorgeous on that. And I had seen it on my it's an extra on the Saga Blu-ray from 2011. So
Hmm.
they had already kind of cut that from the holiday special and then like highlighted it in one spot because that's the only thing they'll show because it's the only
it's
decently good thing from
it's
the
the
holiday
gem.
special.
Yeah.
It's the gem, and it's Boba Fett, and it's classic Nirvana animation. So I watched that. That was great. And then I kind of sampled some Ewoks. It is so strange also to see those in really good quality because I'm used to people's VHS rips that they put on
Uh-huh.
YouTube
Yeah.
or elsewhere. So it's not like full on HD, but it's remastered. It looks good. Um, and then I'm excited also to rewatch the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars because I forgot to mention that it was coming a few weeks ago, and then I saw it and I was like, oh yeah, that's part of the vintage collection now. And
Yeah, it'd be nice to be super accessible, especially for me. I don't
yeah,
have to go dig into a box, in the
right.
garage to pull out a DVD.
Yeah, and I mean the DVDs are cool. I own them also.
Hmm.
They have some great bonus extras on them, like interviews with the creative team, and then also exactly how they tied them into the upcoming, at the time, Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
But I think what's awesome about this vintage collection, I think a lot of kids they're just gonna think Ewoks is okay. Like for little kids, it's perfect. But like I think preteens probably aren't gonna care a whole lot for like the Ewok TV movies and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think they're gonna dig the 2003 Clone Wars. That's right up the alley of a kid these days.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And we didn't. I think in the updated announcement they mentioned that droids will be coming later this year.
oh, did they?
Yeah, they did. They did have a blurb at the end of the updated
Oh,
announcement.
I
So
yeah,
we
I
will.
figured they were holding on to it for some reason.
Yeah, we had speculated that maybe it was a licensing issue of some
Hmm.
sort,
Right.
but your theory of it maybe them dropping it closer to that Disney Plus
Droid's tail
Droids
or
Tales or whatever it
what it
is,
is.
they might be dropping it closer to that to sort of synergize
Yeah.
something, whatever
Or the Star
marketing.
Wars Visions thing, which I think is coming later this year. That might also the timeline might work out for
Yeah,
when they drop it. Whatever it is, because this Visions thing that's coming, I think they said is animation based, where it's like different stories that with different CG and other types of animation. So, or they said it was anime inspired. So
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it would come around that time.
They should get Anthony Daniels to do like a fireside sit down to intro each
Oh,
episode.
that would be so cool.
Kind of like I have the DVDs, the old DVDs of the South Park
Yeah,
DVDs,
yeah.
where I think they had Matt and Trey would do kind of a joke intro
I
to
kind
those
of remember that.
DVDs.
I've seen those clips.
And the Clerks DVD release had live action intros with the actors, or at
Oh,
least
nice.
what's his face,
The guy that plays Dante.
Randall. No, Randall.
Oh, Randall. Yeah,
Or
yeah.
or I don't even remember. It's been so long since I watched those dang DVDs. I think he makes an appearance in one of them, but he's
Yeah,
not the one that intros it. I don't even remember. I just remember there being live action intros and stuff, and it was kind of a
right.
neat thing when they would do that for the DVD
Yeah,
releases of those series. And obviously they're like short series, so it was easy to do. But
yeah.
if they kind of did that, even for just like each season of Droids, because
Hmm.
wasn't it like 2 seasons or something?
Yeah, there was actually technically, I think Droids has, I think it has it has three arcs of episodes, but I think it's technically two seasons.
Okay. Yeah, even if Anthony recorded something, just 2 things or something to
Yeah,
intro each season or arc or whatever, that'd
yeah,
be kind of cool. But
yeah, definitely.
maybe
And
that's what they're waiting for. They're just waiting to time, his
they gotta
schedule and
record.
stuff. Yeah.
I know, social distance record with Anthony and make everything set up at his house and all that. It could it'd be funny if it was like I don't know if you remember this, but the because I only watched a little bit of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles when it aired.
Hmm.
Like I just sampled it and it just wasn't my thing. It was too
Right.
educational and it
Yeah.
didn't have enough Harrison Ford.
What's this
But
learning crap?
yeah, what's this learning crap? But I do remember the bookends on the television aired versions had an older version of Indy played
Hmm.
by I can't remember the actor, but he was in his 70s and he had an eye patch. So
Yes.
it's like Indy at like 90 something years old.
Yeah.
And they took those out when it was re-released on VHS and the later DVDs, I guess.
Oh, that's
Um,
crap.
they just figured that the bookends were unnecessary, and then they did have the one. They did have one episode with Harrison actually
Yes.
doing a bookend, uh, where it was like Wyoming 1952, and I
Yeah.
think if I recall from reading it in Star Wars Insider when they shot it, Rick McCallum was saying that Harrison did it because they could just shoot all the scenes near his home in
Right.
Wyoming.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
didn't. All he had to do was roll out of bed and like
You
they
mean you can shoot this at my outhouse? Okay, let's go.
right, and then they filmed it in one day. So it was like no work for Harrison. He probably got $1 million.
Oh, you know what they did? They probably said, "Hey, we can film near your house, and we need you to fly us in on a helicopter to film it." He's like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it
right,
then." Any
right.
excuse to fly.
Yeah. But anyway, Vintage Collection on Disney Plus. It's cool. Check it out. It's 80s goodness, and I love the little Kenner inspired design where it says Vintage Collection.
Oh yeah, those title cards or whatever are really cool.
Hmm.
So the next news item is our we have a channel announcement for our YouTube channel where we have started posting our lore play videos and
Yes.
soon to be posting Mysteries of the Sith and Rogue Squadron 3D.
Right. It's been a lot of fun making these. I think people that are listening to this, even though we post our podcast on the YouTube channel right now, and people are going to see the lore play commentaries as we put these on a normal podcast platform and have new listeners to older episodes, they might not know about the lore play stuff. So I
Right.
felt it was good that we highlight this and kind of let people know, yeah, we have these full playthroughs of classic Star Wars video games mostly for PC, pretty much, well, obviously all for PC, but in the future, you never know. I mean, if we get the right setup or something, maybe we could get some console commentaries, but it'd be a lot harder to pull off. But
And we try to
yeah,
retain the the aesthetic of the game as it was then.
yes,
With a lot of these games, there's like updated models and stuff. There's fan update projects that have taken place that make the games look a lot better than they did.
yeah,
But we're not going for that, and also trying to do full playthroughs as much as is reasonable.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
We're definitely pushing it on some of these.
yeah, watching boomers fumble through 20-year-old games isn't
Yeah,
exactly the most exciting content, but um, also try to
it,
cut
yeah.
out the chaff and the
Yeah,
crud from it.
it's really for people probably around our age as Star Wars fans that grew up with these games like we did. And it's not just about revisiting those and the nostalgia that surrounds them, but it's almost like in a lot of cases we haven't played these since the late 90s
Yeah, I
or
mean,
early
really,
2000s.
it's
So
just an
yeah,
excuse for us to play these games. That's
it
it.
really
There's
is. And but
there's
at the
really
same
there's not like people clamoring for
right.
this
But at the
stuff.
same time, I felt it was a good experiment to recapture what it's like to go back and revisit those and remember things and go, oh yeah, this level, you know.
Well, and
Because
there's a lot of stuff in those games that you would try to incorporate into canon and lore, even if it's
yeah,
just head canon and
yeah.
head lore.
Yeah, there was, like I've pointed out in the videos with Mysteries of the Sith, there's a lot of parallels with The Rise of Skywalker, and likewise, Dark Forces and Jedi Knight have a lot of parallels with Rogue One and things of that sort. So we'll be doing these constantly. It'll the recordings are always going to be slightly behind from when they actually come out. So in some cases, we're talking about the latest Mandalorian episode to something that people are going to see like 2 months later,
Right. Yeah.
or even longer in some cases. But
Yeah.
it's really about just capturing the game, having fun, going through old memories of when we played it, and also the rapport of doing a live recording while gaming. It's just a different thing than this podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, check those out. More games are coming soon. Obviously, on the Instagram, I do announcements for everything as we record and put up on the channel. So keep an eye on that, everybody. And then we have the Alan Dean Foster situation here and his lack of royalties from Disney, or partial royalties, I should say, because he's still obviously getting his royalties for the Force Awakens novelization, but they were not paying him for what they purchased from Lucasfilm that he wrote in the 70s. So he wasn't.
And his Alien novelizations. So Alien,
Yeah, yeah,
Aliens, and Alien
yes,
3,
because now that
which
they own Fox,
yes, and that
so
I guess that started too when they bought Fox.
right.
That's kind of implied. So I don't know. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think he was getting royalties for at least a few years, but this is a recent thing where I think it's somewhere in mid 2020 or maybe before that, it stopped. And I think it was right around the time of the Fox buyout and that transition period. So, and then also you had COVID in this mix, and we speculated, or I did on a gameplay video going back, that maybe Disney was trying to cut costs where they could, and they thought, hey,
Mm-hmm.
let's screw over somebody here that might not know how or why they're getting screwed over, but whatever we can do to save a few $1,000 per month, actually more in that case. I mean, he probably gets pretty decent royalties for the novelization of A New Hope and Splinter of the Mind's Eye, even though they are legends. They're classic legends. They've been in print for literally like 43 years or whatever or
Yeah.
more in the case of Star Wars. But yeah, there he actually went to the whole he wrote an open letter
Mm-hmm.
actually, and I wanted to highlight some of the things he says here so that listeners can get the full gist. He says, quote, he's talking about Disney here. Quote, when you purchase Lucasfilm, you acquire the rights to some books I wrote. Star Wars, the novelization of the very first film, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the first sequel novel. You owe me royalties on these books. You stopped paying them. And then he goes into the Aliens, and Alien 3 novelizations. And he says, quote, all these books are still very much in print. They still earn money for you. When one company buys another, they acquire its liabilities as well as its assets. You're certainly reaping the benefits of the assets. I'd very much like my minuscule share. You want me to sign an NDA before even talking. I've signed a lot of NDAs in my 50-year career. Never once did anyone ever ask me to sign one prior to negotiations, for the obvious reason that once you sign, you can no longer talk about the matter at hand. Every one of my representatives in this matter, with many, many decades of experience in such business, echo my bewilderment. You continue to ignore requests from my agents. You continue to ignore queries from the science fiction and fantasy writers of America. You continue to ignore my legal representatives. I know this is what gargantuan corporations often do. They ignore requests and inquiries, hoping the petitioner will simply go away or possibly die. But I'm still here, and I'm still entitled to what you owe me, including not to be ignored just because I'm only one lone writer. How many other writers and artists out there are you similarly ignoring? And then he goes on to say that he was dealing with a advanced form of cancer a few years back, and his wife had medical issues. And these are things that are going to hit somebody really hard financially, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like on top of everything else, he's having this royalty issue. I mean, it's just, it bewilders me. Just like he says, I can't believe in this day and age, a company, even if this is a mistake, I can't believe this mistake is happening. And I can't think it's a mistake.
No, I
It's
don't
too
think it's a
big.
mistake. If it did start in 2020, then it would seem like a company wide sort of mandate to, you know, cut spending as much as possible.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't really matter, COVID or not COVID. It's got to be rectified, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, this is kind of an oldish story because I think this all came up back in what, December,
I think I
I
first heard
think.
about it in November, but yeah.
Oh yeah, November. But interestingly enough, we're mentioning it now. 4 or 5 months later,
Yeah.
6 months later,
It's
really,
been festering.
almost. Um, half expecting there to be an update, but there hasn't been an update. So
Yeah,
presumably there hasn't been any change.
I tried looking around online, and every article I could find was no more recent than about December.
Yeah, and similarly with interviews, I've watched some recent interviews, and he doesn't talk about it. So presumably, maybe the lawyers are hashing stuff out in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't imagine that he would have signed that NDA that he mentions because he has definitely not pulled punches on, I wouldn't say trashing Disney, but just being honest about how he feels about not Disney as a company, but just like what Disney has done with Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's
Mm-hmm.
not particularly a fan of some of the stuff that
Yeah,
they've
and
done.
there was that recent article about the things that got cut from his novelization of The Force Awakens.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess he's got a memoir coming out that he goes into detail about other stuff, other novelizations he's written, and the suggestions that he made to the productions of those movies that he
Right,
novelized,
right.
that were, you know, similarly ignored or cut out of his novelizations or whatever.
Yeah,
But as far as the Disney deal goes, it's, you know, it's crappy. And
Yeah,
I was hoping there'd be some sort of update by now, but unfortunately there is not an update.
I had thought there was. I thought there it had been resolved, but like I said, I looked around, couldn't find anything. Um, yeah, there was this recent article on comicbook.com. There was some choice quotations from him regarding things that Disney decided to cut from the novelization. He says, quote, "There was a couple of things in there and a couple of things that happened subsequently that bothered me. I'm going to tell you one thing they made me take out because enough time has passed. I don't think it matters." He says he he adds that there was, quote, obviously the beginnings of a relationship between Finn and Rey, and I expected to see that develop further in episode 7, and zero happened with it. And we all know why zero happened with it. There's no need to go into it in depth, but that's sadly just the way things are. And obviously he's referring to the changes of the story that Ryan Johnson and everything that happened with that. Um, he does say he gives his very honest opinion about The Last Jedi. He says it's a terrible film and a terrible Star Wars movie. I I appreciate his candor. I don't agree, even though I've mentioned this before. I don't need to rehash everything. I don't think The Last Jedi is a terrible film. I don't even think it's a terrible Star Wars film. Obviously, there's a lot of things that could have been done better, but I kind of reserve the word terrible for like the movie Troll 2 or something. You know,
Yeah.
that's a little harsh, but obviously he had a bad experience, or not really bad, but he was miffed by the things that got cut from the TFA novelization. So it
Not
makes
even
sense
sure he
that,
was that miffed. I think maybe he didn't like The Last Jedi, which I totally agree. I don't, well, I shouldn't say totally agree. I don't necessarily think it's a bad film. I will not, I'll give Ryan Johnson that. I do think it's a terrible Star Wars movie.
well, there you go.
So I do totally agree with his assessment there.
And that's our episode of Hannity and Combs.
Siskel and Ebert. But obviously he would be more open to criticizing that movie if he's got a beef with Disney
Yes,
outside of that.
absolutely.
So
And that's something people need to remember. Obviously, when whether it's an actor like Gina Carano, which we're going to go into at some point here, or someone writing for Disney and they have a bad experience, there's all kinds of many things that are going to color their perception, and it's going to make their reflection on the company be negative. So what I
well,
mean,
I don't think that that's necessary. I don't think that that colors his opinion on The Last Jedi. I think that's an honest assessment.
no, in his case, I think it is. But what I mean is, you know, in some cases, this is the actions of a multitude of people, and I think sometimes it's no one's necessarily being nefarious. Obviously, whoever decided he's not getting royalty checks is being nefarious,
Oh
but
yeah, as
that's
far as that's concerned.
as
Yeah.
far as that's concerned. But what I mean to say is, you have to separate who is doing what, because just because someone didn't like a movie, that doesn't mean they're a horrible person or something.
Well,
Um,
yeah. I don't know anybody's trashing Alan Dean Foster for giving his opinion on The Last Jedi.
yeah.
I think what it really with that, it's he obviously does not expect to work with Disney again, probably, right?
Yeah,
Like if they've
yeah,
done this to him, why would he want to? I mean, he is presumably getting paid for the work that he did directly for Disney.
he
It's
is.
the
He
prior
does.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He
So
mentions that he is,
but
but
even so, I suspect that he doesn't anticipate working
yes,
for Disney again.
yeah,
So he can be because you know the actors and stuff are they're working or they're continuing to work under NDAs
yeah,
presumably. So that's why and you know Disney obviously owns a big swath of Hollywood, so they're not going to if any of the actors had a poor experience working with Disney or have a low view of some of the choices Disney made with the movies or the movies in particular, they're not necessarily going to say something because one, they might have an NDA, and two, they want to be able to work for Disney on other projects
yeah.
in the future. Of course, John Boyega has been pretty candid about his opinions on
Hmm.
certain story elements, but that's a whole other thing. That's
Yeah,
applying pressure to Disney more than just like you know crapping on a movie in particular or a story in
right,
particular. He's putting social pressure on Disney to step up and you know
right.
do certain things. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just a bummer that he has to deal with this. I was kind of curious what what his cancer diagnosis was, but I wasn't able to find anything on it, and that's fine. I mean, it's his private life, so he just
Yeah.
makes a mention of it.
Yeah, I just hope
And
he's okay because
yeah, him
Alan
and
Dean
his wife.
Foster, yeah,
Him
him
and
and
his
his wife.
wife.
Alan Dean Foster, and he's not my favorite Star Wars author by any means. He's very serviceable in his writing for the most part. I will say though, for you and I, he holds a special place because he's the first Star Wars author we ever read.
Yeah,
Period. You
yeah.
know, I mean, those Splinter of the
Well,
Mind's Eye,
he,
and
as far as my transition into adult books, when I think I was about 12 years old, I found a box of books. I've told you this story before, but I found
Mhm,
in the garage at my grandmother's house, I found a box
mhm,
of books that may have belonged to my grandfather, maybe one of my uncles at some
mhm,
point, and it was just a collection of different books. There was like Pet Cemetery, which was my gateway to Stephen King,
right,
um, and the other major book in there that was probably the first or second. Um, it actually might have been the first adult novel I read was the novelization for Alien
nice,
by Alan Dean Foster, because
yeah,
I was like a big fan of Alien and Aliens at the time, and it
yes,
was kind of, you know, stoked to find that box of books and all that stuff, and it was something that had readily available. So I think that he is probably the first real author I read.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That wasn't a
Transitioning
children's book.
away, yeah, that wasn't a children's book or a young adult book, and so I mean, yeah, he's not gonna, you know, blow your skirt up. You know, he's not gonna
Yeah,
blow you away with his writing, but
yeah.
it's very good.
It is
What author does?
added.
You know,
Yeah.
Zahn's really good, but he doesn't blow me away. You know,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. There's always give and take with Star Wars authors over the years, and some have fizzled out, and some have come back and knocked it out of the park again years later. But I was just really happy to see his name on the Force Awakens novelization after.
it lended sort of a weight to it, I guess,
Yeah,
because of his history,
yeah,
because of his
and then
history with
the
the
fact that
books.
he actually had the wills mentioned at the beginning in like a kind of like a prologue or like a almost like a recitation of a fable, how
Hmm.
he it was it brought everything full circle when you see the Journal of the Wills from A New Hope. So
Yeah,
that was cool.
in interviews and stuff, he comes off as somebody that really cares about what he's writing about. Not necessarily the story or whatever, but just like putting his name on the book. And so if
Yes.
he sees an issue with a story, he'll try to rectify it, like he did in The Force Awakens. He
Hmm.
fixed Star Killer Base and how it
Yeah,
operated.
right.
Um, but also he'll go as far, and like I said, in his I guess it's kind of a memoir or whatever. He says he'll go into, you know, suggestions that he made to movie productions to change story stuff that he fixed in his novelization to
Yeah.
fix it in the movie. He, I guess, famously did it with the Black Hole. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I
That was
guess
another one.
in his upcoming book, he'll detail what those changes he suggested
Right.
were. But yeah, he's thoughtful, and he cares about the science of science fiction and making it work and make sense, which I really like that, because we've talked about the problems we have. We could talk ad nauseum about the problems we have with
I think
the
we've mentioned it 7 or 8 times now.
yeah,
The
exactly.
hyperspace through the shield of Starkiller Base.
Yeah, we have many problems with the science of the sequel trilogy, the Star Wars science of the prequel trilogy or the sequel trilogy,
Yeah,
and he does too. It's, you know, it's kind of cool that there's other people that care about that stuff too, like the same
exactly.
way we do. And he cares, like I said, he cares enough to, like, you know, make suggestions to a production of a
Yeah,
movie to make
I love
changes.
that.
And yeah, it really, you know, it endears him more to me than before, like
Yeah,
him having that sort of, you know, anal retentive, you know, care about the science of it. So
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
come on, pay him up, Disney. He
Come
deserves
on.
it.
Come on, Disney. Come
I mean,
on.
how many years left does he have? You know, it's not like
Yeah.
he's not even a guy that's like living high on the hog, right? He's
No,
like,
no.
you know,
He's probably
to,
just living decently comfortable in a medium-sized house, and that's it,
I think he lives in Arizona, which is like similar to a lot of other authors. I think Stackpole lives in either Arizona or New
I think you're
Mexico.
right. I think you're right.
You know, cost of living is a little bit less there, so it's easier
Right.
to get by on, you know,
Yeah.
the pennies that companies like Disney are paying out
Right.
if you're lucky, you
Yes.
know, for the work that you're doing. So hopefully there'll be
Right.
an update soon with
Yeah.
some sort of resolution that that works in his favor. Because
Yeah,
you know, if
this
his
is a story we're gonna keep an eye on.
yeah, if his wife has medical problems, if he I don't know what the status is on his cancer and stuff, but if his family is dealing with that, he needs, you know, he needs to get paid. He
Yeah,
doesn't need to worry
absolutely.
about this stuff. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the Gina Carano Forbes article,
Gina
which
Carano, who's that?
yeah, right. Who is that? Which the article came out almost a month ago now. It's not like totally recent, but like everything surrounding the story, I know personally, I like to let things sit for a while to figure out what's going on, what's really going on.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't want to talk about it sooner than now. But you read the article, right?
Yeah, I read it a few days ago, and it makes some great points. I'm glad that the author himself sat on it for a while before he
Well,
at least a week or so.
the one of the things I noticed about that author, not only did he mention that he sat on it for a while, which I think everybody should do in general, he also deleted his Twitter.
Oh, okay.
I think he deleted it right before
Wow.
he dropped
Yeah.
that article.
So I guess he knew the deluge that might come, or possibly he just felt like it was the better thing to do in general. Maybe, who knows?
I would imagine in general it's probably a good thing to do, especially if you're not looking to, you know, open yourself up for attack, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of
So
people will feel the need to respond to attacks and
yeah.
stuff.
So what's the rundown of this article? What's some of the key points that he makes? Because I mean, yeah, basically what he's very level-headed with the situation. In other words, because everyone was knee-jerk reaction about it, including myself, and I still have mixed feelings about Gina on a personal level for me, but I'm able to understand the context more of where she was coming from and how Disney handled it.
Yeah, I think the main gist of it, sort of similar to what I just said about he deleted his or he deactivated his Twitter to avoid, you know, attacks that he might feel compelled to respond to in a knee jerk reaction. The article just the main gist of it is that Disney had a knee jerk reaction to, you know, what she posted and the other stuff. I guess it was all building up as far as
Oh, we should probably mention where this article is.
yeah, it's Forbes.
Yeah,
That's
Forbes.com.
the big
Yeah.
deal, right? So
Yeah,
that's the
that
big
is.
deal about the article. This isn't something on like BuzzFeed or on some crackpot's YouTube channel
Right.
or, you know, somebody just shitting out a 6-part Twitter, you know,
Yes.
uh, diatribe about it.
Yeah.
This is on
The
Forbes.
article.
This is a huge industry, you know, business
Yeah. Yeah.
magazine.
Yeah. The
Um,
article is Disney's firing of Gina Carano is confusing and hypocritical, lacking sound management. And the author is Gene Del Vecchio.
yes, and it's so the article is critical of Disney's knee-jerk reaction and firing of Gina Carano, and it brings up points about their double standard with
Hmm.
the stuff that Pablo had posted,
Yeah.
which, you know, even at the time when we talked about it a few episodes ago, you know, I gave them the benefit of the doubt where, you know, when he posted that stuff, it was prior to The Mandalorian airing,
Yeah.
because I think it was all the way
Yeah.
back in 2018.
Yes.
So it wasn't like Disney needed to react to it.
Right.
But at the same time, Disney has fired people for posts that they made a long time ago, like James Gunn, and then subsequently rehired later
Yeah.
because, you know, they had, you know, they just had this reaction to the social media backlash.
Yeah.
To
And I think the James Gunn posts that were in question, dude, I think they were like from 2011 or 2012 or maybe even older than that,
I think it
actually.
was older. It was back when he was working for Troma, so
Might have been
he was
2000. Yeah, something like that.
something. He was trying to be edgy, you know.
Right.
But
That's
anyway,
promo.
it's just so
Yeah. Yeah. In
the
other words,
article is
we don't need our entire life under the glare of hypercritical people. It's just not fair. You can't do that.
yeah. And so some of the points he brings up are the the double standard with what Pablo had posted, and probably
Mhm.
others too. Maybe, I mean, he doesn't mention
Are you
it,
talking
but
about Pedro or Pablo Hidalgo?
oh, Pedro.
Because like you kept saying Pablo, and I'm like, what if Pablo
I know.
Hidalgo
No,
is that guy?
Pedro Pascal.
I thought you were
Um,
talking about the Star Wars theory situation, but
you
then
know
you
what?
said,
There's too many
yeah,
P names is the problem.
yeah,
No, it's Pedro Pascal, the stuff that he
yeah,
posted in 2011. Disney doesn't care about Pablo. He's on
yeah.
the he's doing his own thing. But
He's living free.
yeah. Um, I think well, all of this is just an example of just don't post on social media.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
like this
Don't.
anyway. But one of the things he points out, along with the double standard, is that there was a poll conducted after the fact, and that when people when people had seen what she posted versus just seeing news articles about her posting something, that the the amount of people that felt like Disney wasn't justified in firing her rose to 72%,
Yeah,
and only 28% thought that Disney was justified.
right.
Which, again, when we talked about this a few weeks ago, I had said people, or I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast or even just in our back and forth on like Facebook and stuff about it.
Hmm.
People just need to look at stuff themselves. Don't trust
Yeah,
news sources, regardless
yeah.
of the political affiliation of that news source or which way they lean or anything like that. Um, Always look
Context
up
is
the
very
information.
important.
It's so easy to find now too.
It absolutely is,
We
and this
have
is a tactic that goes back since the time of the dawn of the newspaper and stuff.
yes, yeah,
Cherry picking things people say and then putting them in a certain way that you want them to appear as. And
right.
obviously now with the rise of deepfakes with video, it's more dangerous than ever.
Oh, we're about to get things are about to get really bad. I feel like with deep fakes and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I mean, if you went by what Disney puts out as far as deep fakes, you'd think, oh, it's easy to tell if it's not real. But
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen stuff on the internet people do it in their
Tarkin looks like
basements.
crap.
Well, I've seen stuff people put together in their basement. It's
I
pretty
know.
scary how close it looks.
Yeah,
Um,
it's impressive. But yeah, that's why you have to be careful. You have to be aware of things. You have to have a very critical eye and ear. You have to be able to quote unquote separate the wheat from the chaff, as George Knapp might say.
mhm.
It's just you have to. And if you can't take everything as being a predetermined thing that fits into what you want to hear. It's important to step outside of your comfort zone and just get some information from a little bit from everywhere and then see what you think. Apply
Yeah,
it to your own filters. But your
yeah,
filters aren't going to be strong if you just are taking everything from one place. That's
right.
just how it works.
And you bring up newspapers. Back when people were reading newspapers, I mean, especially when that was the primary source of news for them, you had to rely on the newspaper. You don't have to do that now.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
somebody says somebody said something, you can go double check. You can go
Yeah.
see. Like,
Yeah.
and that was my point in anytime I commented on the story on social media and stuff. I said, why just go look. Go look at what she said. Because this
Right.
article that you posted doesn't say what she said. It says she says something, but it doesn't like screenshot what she actually posted.
Right.
It doesn't verbatim show what her post was. Even post going back further than just the one that got her canned,
Right, right. And then,
about
of
the
course,
Holocaust.
the end of the article makes it clear that although she's reportedly, it says, mocked wearing a mask during the pandemic and suggested that voter fraud took place in the 2020 election. Then they also say if that criteria was applied nationwide tonight, unemployment would spike to as much as 50% tomorrow morning. So obviously, those posts are. It's easy to paint her in one corner and say she's this
Well,
if
none
her
of
other posts are kind of like
yeah,
leaning that way. And it's important to be clear that the reason she was fired is not those things,
yeah,
but specifically her, her parallel with the Jews and things like that, which both you and I and this article make clear is a terrible analogy and is
yes,
overused for nefarious purposes by both sides. And a much better analogy would have been the blacklisting of the 1950s,
yeah. I really
which,
appreciated that in the article that he mentions that, because
yeah,
I personally hadn't considered that as like, oh, what would I think is a better
yeah,
analogy, and that is
it really
um,
is. It actually fits really, really well.
Um, and the other thing he mentions as far as sort of a hypocrisy on Disney's part is they will, and this is true of everyone with virtue signaling and caring about certain things. You really do pick and choose what you care about, because Disney will care enough to fire Gina over ruffling some feathers with a social media post. But they don't have a problem filming in China in the same province where they're sending Uyghur Muslims into
Yeah.
internment camps.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, that's like really bad and kind of funny and coincidental because Gina gets in trouble for making a comparison between conservatives and Jews during World War
Yeah.
II and the Holocaust, who were of course sent to concentration camps, and then
Yes.
Disney has no problem doing business in a country that is currently sending a religious group into internment camps.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys. Like you say, oh, and of course, the other thing that kind of happened and maybe spurred this. Well, I don't know. Maybe it didn't spur this article on, but right before this article, Disney had that shareholder conference call, and people asked about the Gina Carano firing and stuff. And these are just sort of semi-normal shareholders of
Yeah.
Disney stock, and they asked about it. And Bob Chapek, the CEO, mentioned how Disney is, they don't lean politically one way or the other. They just stand for
Yeah.
values, and they want to stand for universal values. They say that, but then they're doing business in China, and China is, sending people into
Yes.
camps.
Here's the thing. Here's the reality of it. What Bob Chapek says isn't wrong. He and Disney have good intentions to uphold those values and family values. I get that. This is one of those situations where actually nobody is wrong. Where it all depends upon your point of view. And the key, and I mentioned this the other night when we weren't recording, but I want to say for this, the key is to see the other points of view and understand them. To not discount them outright because they don't fit into your predetermined worldview, but to understand that Gina is absolutely right from her point of view. Disney shareholders have great points. The point about the Mulan filming location is a great point. And we have to understand that Disney is a massive company, and obviously they're going to be contradictory in their policies with one thing or another. Obviously, the person that decided Gina is fired might not have been the same guy that decided where Mulan was filmed, but
right.
Yes.
Well, I think we probably know who fired Gina, right? Like it was probably Kathleen Kennedy because she's the head of Lucasfilm.
Probably. They would actually go in line with the other firings that have happened in the Star Wars production with her.
And clearly Kathleen is not deciding where Mulan gets shot.
Right.
So
this is just one of those situations. Now, again, this is one of those things that is going to stoke fandom one way or the other. Now, it's weird because there's been things that I think what upset me about the Gina situation was she did things that I find to be personally intolerable. But then on the other hand, just before this happened, I was defending her against the same people that were saying like, cancel her. So I was put in the situation where I had to reconcile how I feel about her. And obviously, because of everything that went down, it was very easy for me to be like, oh, fuck her. I guess, it's kind of like when a bad breakup happens and you really care about that person. To save your emotions, it's easier to just cut and run. And so I kind of had to do that with Gina. But now that things have settled a little bit, and I've read some articles, and including this one, which is very level-headed, it's helped me to understand things better. And I'm also glad that despite their political differences, I'm really happy that Pedro and Gina are still friends because they've both like she said like she and Pedro still talk, and they still and that was important because they obviously had a great friendship on the set, and their characters had a great rapport on screen. And so I just hope that in the near future, I hope people realize one way or the other that her contribution to The Mandalorian isn't forgotten or erased. And I want it to be still seen as something special that was captured, even if she doesn't come back. I just hope that those first 2 seasons are not marred by her presence.
I can't. I would have a hard time believing that the majority, or even a really sizable minority of Star Wars fans really care that much about the post.
Probably not. It's YouTubers and people.
Well, even YouTubers. I mean, do they really care? Or are they just looking for clicks? You know,
Yeah, I know. Like
is
us,
it
please send us your clicks.
is it the rabid minority on Twitter that
Yeah,
harass people to conform to their political ideal? And
yeah,
the
yeah.
other point too is, how is anyone going to change anyone else's mind by just shutting them down? And this is true on either
Right.
side of a debate. If you just silence the other person and shut them down, do you think you're going to change their mind?
Yeah,
No.
exactly. You're
It's
gonna
like,
galvanize them into already, because then they're gonna be like, well, I knew that would happen, therefore it's going to fire them up even more in whatever other
exactly.
platform
You're
they
going to
find.
harden them.
That's
You're going to solidify their ideals, and
this is why countries have a hard time being colonized by outside invasions.
yeah,
This is
exactly.
exactly that. Are you gonna give them your hand and help them, or are you gonna just wipe them out? You know,
If
the lessons are right there in Star Wars.
And I think a good example is Gina and uh, Pedro's friendship, right? Because
Yeah.
Pedro has a sibling who's
Hmm.
trans,
Yeah.
and all, and if anyone thought that Gina had something against transgenderism in some fashion, right? I mean, the worst she did was refuse to put her pronouns into her Twitter.
Oh, how dare she? How
But
dare
if
she?
anybody thought that she had a beef, right, outside of
Yeah.
that, certainly she probably doesn't anymore after having a good friend that has a sibling, that she's connected to, um, that, right? She
Yeah.
has a personal connection through a friend.
And that's
Um,
what she said, right? She put out
yeah,
a thing saying her and Pedro talked about it, and he helped her understand more about why people do that. And
yeah,
that's all that needed to happen. That's
right,
it, you know? And that would have been fine. And I completely defended her point of view in that regard. So
yeah,
I totally get it. No one should be forced to put their pronouns. If you want to
um,
put it, cool, but you shouldn't be forced ever.
yeah. So I think that the to sum it all up at this point in time is that people just need to. I mean, I've said before, just don't post on social media,
Yeah.
for one. But the other thing is, just just look up the sources yourself, because part of the thing too, she didn't write the post that got her in trouble. She just reshared something that some other
Regurgitated things.
Instagram. Yeah, she just regurgitated a meme, basically.
Which is what so many of us do, and I'm
Yeah.
guilty of it a lot of times. If something fits into my predetermined point of view, it's easy to do that. It saves time. It saves time from having to stop and think about things. That's
And
that's the problem with stereotypes. It's just easy. It saves time.
that's what everybody needs to do, is anytime something big happens, or small, because this really is kind of a small thing in the grand scheme of things, just take a step back, let the information come out if there's information to come out, and look stuff up yourself and make up your own mind. Don't let whatever news source that popped up on your Facebook feed or whatever
Yeah.
feed determine how you feel about something. Look up information in context. Always look up context,
Yep.
because you'll find that a lot of times it's really not as bad as you thought. Um,
Exactly.
and this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a great part at the end of the article here. I highlighted and I wanted to read because I think everyone should hear this. But it's something that there needs to be a certain standard for social media responsibility in the near future as to what condones a firing. And the quote from the article says, "quote As companies cancel people for their opinions, it feeds a dangerous cycle. The more they cancel, the more they embolden the mob to target more people and organizations. Then repeat." Disney and many other organizations are playing a very dangerous game out of fear, partisanship, and or misplaced sincerity. The beast they help to create and indulge may eventually devour them. And then the other part here, organizations need a more thoughtful system, not a knee-jerk reaction, to guide decisions regarding who gets fired. They need to specify what constitutes the most egregious offenses. It needs to be transparent, so the rules are known and not hidden in vague platitudes open to interpretation. It cannot be the decision of one person, but should be made by a group of people with varied views who apply a standard yardstick. They need to balance the right to free speech with social responsibility, and they need to take into account not simply the highly vocal individuals who are fast to complain, but mainstream audiences who need time to digest the situational nuances, which is exactly what we've been saying.
Yeah, and very true, because you know what? That vocal minority, they're not the ones spending the money. It's
Yeah,
the silent majority that goes out to Target and buys the toys and fuels your your franchise, whether
Yeah,
it be Marvel or Star Wars or anything like that.
just like all the sequel trilogy haters that keep buying tickets to more Star Wars movies and then
Well,
complain about them.
they steadily bought less. I mean, at least I know I did.
Yeah. I love pointing that out though when someone complains like,
Oh
Star
yeah,
Wars is
yeah.
ruined on like it's like the fifth or sixth movie of Disney, and it's like, what made you think things were gonna get better after the first? I can understand the first couple, but if you hated like everything after The Last Jedi or even like Rogue One, what makes you think something was gonna change? You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, without actual change taking place as far as like
Yeah.
leadership and all that stuff. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's just like,
that's an overreaction for sure to sit
yeah.
there and say that
I
it's
just I
ruined.
I just love pointing out those foibles that people have. Was there anything else about this article you wanted to cover? I summed up all of my thoughts.
The only other thing that I thought was interesting is that Forbes at this point is owned by a Hong Kong-based investment company called Integrated Whale Investments.
Mhm.
They own 95% of Forbes. The Forbes family, I think, owns the other 5% at this point.
Mm.
So I thought it was interesting. Obviously, I don't know if it's Hong Kong-based, how tied in they are with the CCP.
Yeah, right.
But I thought it was
They're in that
interesting that
little
they,
island there.
yeah, I thought it was interesting that they, let slide the mention of the Uyghur
Yeah,
persecution.
yeah,
Um, Although Steve Forbes is still the editor in chief, and I guess he would still have overall control.
yeah. Some kind of say.
I think the Washington Post reported that there has been instances of editorial meddling, but I don't know any
Okay.
details regarding that. Anyway, so I thought it was interesting that they did make mention of that. Although it's
Yeah,
not the highlight of the article, it's not like what the article
yeah,
is about necessarily, but
yeah.
um,
Interesting side note about Forbes. The first time I ever saw a picture from the special editions was in Forbes. It was in it was strangely enough, it was a George Lucas cover article from 1996. I still have the magazine somewhere. It was like the magic of Lucas or something, and it was him
yeah.
on the cover. And there was a timeline of everything that ILM had done from the 70s to the 90s, and there was a tiny little picture of the Rebel squadron from flying out of Yavin 4.
Mhm.
And it was like this little picture, but I was so excited to see that. I was like, whoa. And I remember I grabbed the magazine as quick as I could. And yeah, so that was, thank you, Forbes, for giving me my glimpse of the special editions.
So
And
anyway,
yeah,
just look up the sources yourself. Wait for information to come out, and please, actors, celebrities, don't post
don't post unless
political
it's just
stuff. Don't post
pictures
political
of your
stuff.
food, just food
There's
selfies. That's it.
there's stuff that Mark
Kittens.
Hamill has posted that has ruffled my feathers that I don't really
Yeah.
like. But you know what? At the end of the day, that's fine. I still like Luke Skywalker. I
Yeah.
still, I still like Mark as a person, even if we
Sure.
don't agree on everything.
Well, what he says fits into my predetermined worldview, so I'm okay with it.
Right. Okay.
And that wraps up our episode of Star Wars Unfiltered. You can reach us on the YouTube channel, of course. We are on Facebook. We are on, send us any questions or comments at StarWarsUnfiltered@yahoo.com. And we are also on Instagram, where I try and post something meaningful every day, or at least something like pictures of Star Wars ice cream sandwiches that my dad takes me, because those seem to get the most
or
likes.
20-year-old Happy Meal boxes from Taco Bell.
Now they are 24-year-old, and yes, they are Taco Bell kids meal boxes.
I still have mine.
Those get the likes, I gotta say.
I still
But
have mine.
anyway, until that next episode, everybody, take care.
Good night.
What?